Hey guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use arrays in Swift and how to iterate through them using loops. So I'll just call this project loops and arrays. And it'll still be a console application in Swift. So the way you create an array is just using the var keyword, obviously, and giving it a name, test array. Then one thing you can do is, for example, you can set it to an empty array of, let's say, integers. And now this test array will be an array of integers, but it will be empty for now. You can then add new elements using the append function. But you can also do something that is kind of cool. Just initialize a bunch of values already inside. So you could say 6, 5, 9, 7, 9, 0, and that'll still work. It will still be an array of integers, but this time it will be initialized with these values and not just nothing. So arrays are cool because they are. I'm just gonna illustrate. If you're not really familiar with them, if you are, you can just ignore this. So in this case, we have this array. So an array is just it's a collection of a bunch of elements. So, and they are ordered based on the position in which they're inserted. So every time you insert a new element, it goes to the last position. So you have 6 at index 0, 5 at index 1, 7 at index 2, 9 at index 3, and 0 at index 4. That is how you access arrays. You use indices, so just a position. And the position of the array starts at index 0. So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then this would be 5, and this would be 6. So to get an element, so let's say first element, you just use the brackets notation. So test array at 0 will give you the element is 0, which would be 6. So if you just go ahead and print that. There we go, 6. However, you might want to do some checks or print all the items in the array without knowing how many items are in that array. And the way you can do that is using loops. So loops, just if you don't know what they are, they're snippets of code that can execute until a certain condition is met. So they can keep executing. There are two main types of while loops. The first one I'm going to introduce. These are going to all iterate through each item. Is the while loop.
It's 11 o'clock.
So the while loop keeps executing until the Boolean inside it is not true anymore. So let's say we create a counter to keep the position to keep track of the current position. We can then say, well, let's go from I until I is invalid. So while I is smaller than test array count. Count gives you the number of elements. You can print line test array at I, and after you've done that, you can increment I, and that'll simply, it'll just print every single element. There it goes. So that is one way, but the while loop is more intended if you have a condition where you're not really sure of how many elements the array contains, or if you're not accessing an array, how many times you need to execute the loop to, I don't know, correct some error or something like that. So what you can, so a loop that would be more appropriate would be the for loop. So to create that, just type for, and the for loop has 3 fields. The first one is the variable creation, which lets you create an element that keeps track of where you are in the array. You then see if that element in the second field, it accepts a Boolean, and it checks if the current position is valid. So if k is smaller than test array.count, and then increment k to get the next items. So we can just print line test array k, and we don't have to we don't even have to increment k because it's already done here. So see, that produces the same output. However, there are also other there's also another type of loop, which is the fast enumeration for loop. What it does, it lets you iterate through each item of a data structure, such as an array, in a very easy way. So let's say you want each item. You can just literally type for current item in test array, and then in each iteration, current item will become the next item in test array. So if we just print this again, they should still print each element. So I think that's kind of cool because it's much less code than this and less than this, and it is helpful to if you need each item in the array. But let's say you want each item in the array, but you also want to keep track of what the current position is. You can do this in a for in loop. The way you would do that is, instead of current item, you would have 2 items. One would be the index, the other one would be the current item, and you would also replace test array by enumerate test array. What this does is it populates index with the current index and current item with the current item. So if we print index and current item, index 0 corresponds to 6, index 1 corresponds to 5, index 2 corresponds to 7, and so on. So this is another cool way of iterating through each item in the array. I just want to make a last introduction to another concept in programming, which is called recursion. What did I do? what recursion allows you to do is it's basically a way of doing loops, but with repeated function calls. So I'm just going to show you how to print each item in the array using recursion instead of a loop. But I won't be using recursion a lot because recursion is usually kind of hard to wrap your head around it, and it should save memory in the sense that you know, with for loops you have i's and you keep you keep updating those i's, and that can slow down your computer. Recursion kind of avoids that. So we can have a function called print each element that takes an array and prints each element in that array. So let's say I colon int. So where do you want me to start? Is the I. And array so what and also another cool thing you can do is you can use templated types, which means it says you can just add this and use a general t value, and what this means is that you might be entering any type of data. It doesn't really matter what type that is. You can make it accept any type. So if we instead change this to int, the function would require us to just enter int arrays. However, if we just replace this with a t, we can enter char arrays, we can enter string arrays, we can enter integers arrays, we can enter anything array. And just because we have to print each element, it doesn't really matter what type it is. So what you have with recursion is a base case. First thing is the base case. What the base case does is it says, am I ready to stop executing? So in this case, it would be, are we at a valid index? So if I is smaller than, actually if I is equal to array.count. So another thing I should mention about arrays is that the last item is 1 minus the count. The count minus 1. So if you have an array of, like this, of 5 elements, see that the last element is 4. So if you try to access 5, the program will crash because you're trying to access an invalid position, an invalid point in memory. So if I reaches that point, you want to just return so that you break out of the function. If not, first you want to print the item at the current index, and then you want to call the function again, and print the next one, and so on. So if we call print each element, test array. See, it just printed each element just like these other loops. I think this is kind of cool, but see, the thing is sometimes the loops you have are too complex for you to wrap your head around them with respect to recursion. So I think it's a good idea generally to stick to loops, but try to minimize those because they might slow your computer down. So that's pretty much it for arrays and loops. In the next video, I'm going to talk about other data types, other data containers, data structures, to show you how you can group data in different ways, and choose the one that best suits you.